When you plant seeds, do you expect them to bloom overnight? Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Ma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I think this I want to talk about why so many marriages struggle. Thank you for the taps, right? And before we talk about fixing our marriage, let's address the root problem, right? Why do so many marriages feel like they're failing apart? And why do we struggle with feeling understood, loved, and appreciated? The number one thing that we have to realize is these unrealistic expectations that we have. And a lot of us enter into marriage, if we're being honest, we enter into marriage that, thinking that it's going to be a fairy tale, but no one tells you that love isn't just felt, right? It's built brick by brick, step by step. Thank you for the Dosi. Step by step, right? Marriage isn't stumbled upon with some hidden treasure. It's built day by day, decision by decision, and sis, that work is where the real beauty really lies when it comes to your marriage. The other thing that I notice is the communication gaps that we have. And tell me if this sounds familiar. You're upset, but instead of saying, I feel hurt because, you go silent and you expect your spouse to know what's wrong. We women are famous for that. Example, you never listen to me. We put the blame on that particular individual. Instead, we should start saying, I feel unheard when we talk about important things, right? Can we find a better way to communicate? These small shifts in communication truly change everything. And this book that I have, actually this ebook, I break it down to you step by step for you to understand it. The other thing that we have, what we struggle in our marriages, is the emotional triggers and baggage that we come with. A lot of what we struggle with in a marriage isn't just about our spouse. It's about us as an individual, our childhood, our past trauma, our attachment styles, and unresolved wounds that show up in our relationships. Okay, if you have you ever asked yourself, right? Have you ever asked yourself, how do I respond to conflicts? Just sit down in this live session, ask yourself, how do I respond to conflict? Why do I react this way? Then sis, if you're able to honestly be honest with yourself and answer those questions, that is where your healing is going to start. That is where growth is going to start in your marriage. Thank you for the shares, right? So if you're able to ask yourself, how do I respond to conflicts? Why do I react this way? This is you taking accountability, number one. And also starting to heal whatever issue that you have, your childhood issues, your traumas, your attachment styles, wherever you got going on mentally. Start asking yourself these type of questions. Two, the other thing that I notice is, the other thing that I want to talk about is, how can we build a thriving marriage? Right? How do we build thriving marriages? If you know what your struggling is, what your issue is in your marriage, talk about solutions. You deserve a marriage that feels fulfilling, peaceful, joyful. Everyone deserves that. The number one thing is, how can you master emotional wisdom? Right? How you mastering your emotional wisdom is going to change the way you handle conflicts. One, the pause button. Stop reacting, start responding. Okay, let's paint a picture. I want you guys to envision this. You had a long, exhausting day. Your spouse comes home. Let's say your husband comes home, forgets to greet you properly. He doesn't say hi, he doesn't kiss you, none of that stuff, right? Leaves his shoes in the middle of the floor, in the middle of the hallway, and then he has the audacity to ask you what's for dinner. At this point, you're like, wallahi, I'm tired. Oh wait, you're like so tired, and you're tired. Okay, you're this close to basically exploding. Now, in that moment, you have two choices: react emotionally You always come home expecting food, like I'm your personal chef. Am I your slave? Whoop, just go off on him. Do you even care about me? You didn't even ask how my day was. This is you responding emotionally. Now, how can I respond with emotional wisdom? Yeah? Pause. You breathe. You assess. Instead of assuming the worst, you choose what you say. I've had a really long day and I feel overwhelmed. I would love to have helped dinner with you. I would love to have you help me to make dinner tonight, or dinner's going to be delayed. Right? You see the difference? When you react emotionally, you're exploding. You're not logical. But when you respond with emotional wisdom, you pause, you breathe, and you assess the situation. You're able to choose what you want to say logically. It flows better. It comes out better. You know, you're not attacking the individual. You're not attacking him. The second expresses your needs without creating unnecessary tension. Imagine if you go off on him using the first one. Like, you always come home expecting food. This and that. Am I your maid? Am I your chef? You go off on him. You don't even know how my days. You don't even care about me. You are rambling too many things in one situation, and sometimes men are not able to process all of those things. They probably just heard one thing of all of the things that you said at that moment. The action that I'm going to give you is, before reacting, ask yourself, am I responding to my husband, or am I reacting to my own triggers? And I'm going to talk about what is an emotional trigger. What's really bothering you? You know, notice how she mentioned that she was overwhelmed and she wanted help to make dinner tonight, right? That's the emotional response. What's really bothering you? Sometimes the argument isn't about what happened. It's about the baggage from the past or whatever we had going on that day. Maybe you grew up feeling unheard, right, in your guys' house, or maybe you came up from a large family and you always felt like your voice was silent. So when your husband dismisses your concerns, it triggers an old wound. Maybe you have been carrying resentment from the past, disagreements, and now every little thing he does feels like a proof that he doesn't care. And sisters, let me tell you something. If you don't identify your triggers, they will control your marriage. I will say that again. If you do not identify your triggers, they will control your marriage. I want you to reflect the next time you feel yourself getting upset. Ask yourself, is this about this moment, or is this triggering something deeper? Right? Ask yourself, is this about this particular moment, or is this about something deeper? Am I being triggered? Thank you for the taps. Am I being triggered for something? Now that's powerful. The other thing is the power of tone. It's not what you say, but how you say. And I know we know this. But at the heat of the moment, we as women, I know us as women. I can't speak for a man. I can only evaluate and assess a man. But for us, we have a very sharp tongue. Like our words are very sharp at times. Very sharp. So it's not about what we're saying, but how we say. So ever notice how a simple phrase can change the meaning based on a tone? We need to talk. You come home, you maybe send a text message. We need to talk. And people can read the tone of a text message, just like you can read the tone when your husband sends you something on a text message. He knows the tone as well. He's not a dimwit, okay? He knows. So we need to talk. How does that come across? Your mind is immediately on the defense. Oh no, what did I do? What is she talking about? What are we going to talk about? You're trying to already find a defensive story, a defense. You're preparing your defense basically. How about we try, hey love, or hey something sweet, hey sweetheart, hey sunshine, hey my love, something like that. I'd love to chat about something on my mind when it's a good time. This is less defensive and more inviting. Now, when your spouse comes to you in that tone, right? In that tone. Even with the we need to talk, there's a way that you can say maybe that's not gonna sound like you about it's gonna be World War X in the home when he comes, or when you get home. Right? Or you're not gonna start it off on the text message. The way we approach conflict determines the outcome. If your tone is harsh, okay, cold, or accusing your husband, he's less likely to listen. We all have short attention span, okay? And men are even worse, I think. They're just like, they're very fit. So if you are gonna have a tone that's already like, okay, he's not gonna listen to you whatsoever. Brandy, thank you for the taps. Fatima, thank you for the taps, right? So, but if you speak with warmth, clarity, and kindness, he'll be more open to hearing you. So try this. Instead of saying, you never help around the house, you never listen to me, you never do this. You see how that comes? You just attacking. Imagine if he constantly says to you, as a wife, you don't do this, you never do that. You're going to feel attacked. You don't take care of the of our home, you don't take care of our kids, you don't do this. It's attacking. And as a human, you're going to naturally want to defend yourself back and say, well, what are you talking about? I do this, I do that. Now you both are fighting. Now you both are just basically going back and forth. So speak with him with clarity, warmth, and kindness. He'll be more than happy to listen to you. Use the I statement, my sister. And I know, and when I'm talking about, and I mentioned that, I make this very clear in previous lives. When I'm talking about men, I'm talking about men. I'm not talking about them little boys who have the title men. I'm talking about real men. Okay? So in the comment section, if you're in your mind, you're like, well, my husband, even when I use the I statement, he doesn't even. Okay, well, maybe your husband is. We're not talking about your husband, right? He's not a man yet. He's a little boy that needs nurturing. He needs to grow up, basically. And sorry to tell the to burst a bubble or something, but a man, a real man, when you talk to him with warmth, with comfort, with clarity, with oh, thank you, your subconscious. He'll be more than open to hearing you. Okay, try I feel overwhelmed when I feel like I'm managing everything. Bring it to you. Talk about you. Do not attack him. Can we find a time to share our tasks better, to communicate better, to do this together? That's the difference. One creates conflict, the other invites solutions. And most men are solution-minded. Remember, just think of it this way. Whenever you're having a conversation with your spouse and you're talking, guess what the first thing that a man does is he tries to bring you solutions. Right? Even though you might just want him to listen, you have to clarify them. Like, listen, I just want you to listen. I don't want solutions at the moment. I want just you to listen. Men by nature want to provide solutions. Okay? Real men. They want to provide solutions for you. Create an environment where you are creating the solution environment, if that makes sense. Okay? The other thing is seeking solutions and not scoring points. Many arguments drag on for days too long because both partners want to win. We women, we want to win. But sis, winning the argument is not the goal, remember. Strengthening your marriages. If this person really, really matters to you, if this person genuinely loves you and you love each other and you want to make it work, the goal is to making it work, to thriving, to have a successful marriage, not to see who is ahead on the scoreboard, who is the leader. That's not going to get you anywhere. So next time you are in a disagreement, ask yourself, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy, peaceful? Yeah? Do I want to be right or do I want a peaceful home? Is this issue really worth losing a peace in my home? Is it really? Do I want to tussle in bed? I want to ignore him. I want to ignore her and just, just keep on playing scenario after scenario after scenario? Am I focusing on a solution or am I just venting frustration? You have to know the difference. If emotions are too high, take a break and revisit the conversations later when you're both calm. If both of you are high, nothing's gonna work. Someone has to be low. Someone has to have a calmer temper. It can't be fire meeting with fire. It's gonna be explosive. Yeah? Emotional wisdom builds a stronger marriage. The most successful wives, the most successful marriages aren't the ones who never argue. They are the ones who know how to handle conflicts. I'm not going to tell you you're going to have a picture perfect man. It doesn't exist, my love. There is no one on this great green earth is going to tell you that I have never had an argument with my spouse. That person is lying to you. And if you're telling them your issues in your marriage, they are trying to give you a false image, a false narrative of a marriage, so you can leave your spouse, to make you wonder, oh my God, so marriages without arguments do exist. Nah, that's a lie. If there is no arguments in that marriage, someone is lying to one another. One of the spouses is lying to another. Understand? Two grown folk humans are not going to agree on every single issue. They're not. There's going to be disagreements. There's going to be arguments. That's just that. But you, those in the marriage, right? You want to have that emotional wisdom to build stronger marriages. You're going to pause before reacting. You're going to express your need without blaming. And it's hard for even men to do this. It's very hard. But a lot of it is for women, my sisters. Right? We like to pass on the blame without taking accountability. You have to reflect on your own triggers, on your own trauma. Right? You need to choose peace over pride, over ego. What about physical and verbal abuse? What do you mean by that, Kums Conte? What do you mean? Right? Again, marriage is not about winning against your spouse. If it comes to that, then you two are not compatible. You two there's something going on. You two are not mature enough to have been married. You two are not mature enough to be in that relationship. To call it a marriage is kind of a disservice to the word marriage. If you feel like I have to win this argument, I have to win, I'm ahead of the scoreboard, then there's something wrong with you. And thriving marriages aren't about avoiding the storm. It's about learning how to navigate it together, hand in hand, right? The next time you're about to respond emotionally, especially to my sisters, I say we women are emotional. That's just that. Okay? Pause and ask yourself, am I responding to my husband or am I reacting to my own triggers? You need to choose peace over your ego, over your pride. You are trying to build a marriage. You're trying to build your marriage. You're trying to have a successful marriage. What if the marriage is already struggling? Right? What if the marriage is already struggling? Then what do I do? Do I still have the same process? Do I still control my tone? What do I do exactly if the marriage is already struggling? Needing to pause before you just talk. Needing to pause, taking a breather, not reacting on your triggers. Really trying to, am I responding to this moment or am I responding to a trigger? Something that happened in my past, something that happened to me, a trauma. Right? Now, what if your marriage is already struggling? You are on the brink. Like this is it. Sometimes despite your best efforts, marriage is exhausting and it can feel exhausting. You're tired of the same arguments, the same misunderstanding, and feeling like no matter what you do, things aren't just working. You start wondering, is this normal? Are we even compatible? Did I marry the wrong person? The first thing you need to do is breathe. Now, struggles in marriage does not mean failure. They mean you are in the thick of the test that every relationship faces, right? No marriage is sunshine and rainbows all the time. That doesn't exist, as I said. The difference between a couple who thrive and those who break apart isn't isn't that they never struggle, is that they learn how to navigate those struggles differently. So let's get practical. If you're already struggling in your marriage, here's some steps that you can take to kind of shift the dynamic. Have that mind shift mastery, even if it feels like nothing is working. Number one, take a step back. Again, you might hear me say this a lot throughout this live for the next 10-20 minutes. Are you reacting or responding? When emotions are running high, we react. And reactions often then not create a cycle of tension. For example, say that there's let's lose a couple, Omar and Henna. That's what I can think of, right? Henna has been frustrated with her husband Omar for months. She feels like she's doing everything, taking care of the kids, running the homeschool, house load, making all the emotional investments in the marriage, while Omar is just, he goes to work, comes home, and barely contributes to it. Many of us feel like that, right? One night after putting the kids to bed, you basically snapped. Henna snaps. She's like, no, you never help with anything. I do everything in this home while you just sit there like a guest. Now, Omar is like, I work 10-hour shifts a day. I work 12-hour shift a day. This and that, right? Make sure you and the kids are good. Everything you need. But yeah, sure, I never help. You see how that's just much tension being created. At that moment, the real issue was buried under anger and blame. You both were reacting. Neither of them were truly communicating. Instead of you reacting emotionally, take a step back. Instead of you never help, you have to reframe it. Reframe it differently. I've been feeling overwhelmed a lot lately. Can we figure out a way to divide things up more fairly for us to work together? Right? This small approach can completely shift the way your spouse perceives what you're saying. 2, you are fighting, or are you fighting the problem or each other? That's one thing that many couples fail to understand. One of the biggest mistakes is that the spouses are enemies of each other instead of the problem being the enemy. Right? Let's say Fatima and Bilal. Fatima and Bilal were constantly arguing about money. Every month it's the same thing, fighting about spending, right? Bilal felt like Fatima overspent on things that weren't necessary. Fatima felt like Bilal was too controlling. He didn't understand what managing household cost money. And one night, after another heated argument, they stopped and asked themselves, are we fighting about money, or are we fighting about control, fear, and unmet expectations? We talked about unmet expectations, didn't we? A lot of us come into a marriage having a huge expectation, and it's like, this is not what I thought. The issue isn't about money. It was the fact that Bilal felt financially pressured and didn't know how to express it. And the wife, Fatima, felt like she was being micromanaged and resented, feeling like she had to justify every purchase. Don't we as women, we hate to, let me not say hate, we dislike asking our spouses, like, see, give me money. And then you kind of feel like, I have to tell him why I need the money, and you don't like having that feeling. That's why sometimes majority of the women go to the workforce, because they feel like, if I have my own money, I don't have to tell him what I'm spending it with. Yeah, I work for this. Like, tell you what, it's my money, right? A lot of women go to work because of that very reason. So the solution is, instead of treating each other like the enemy, you need to sit down and ask yourself, it feels like money has become a stressful topic for us. What can we do to make this easier for both of us? You get mind shift mastery, shifting the focus from you're wrong to let's solve this together. It removes that defensiveness and invites solutions. The third thing, when resentment builds, the danger of being, keeping a scorecard, right? You're trying to see if you're ahead in the scorecard, if you have 10 points more than him, or vice versa. There is a, sometimes it doesn't have to be verbal. You are silently keeping a scorecard. Let's say two couples here. The wife constantly is keeping mental receipts of everything that the husband did not do. Didn't help with the kids, check. Didn't say thank you to me after dinner, check. Didn't notice I was upset, check. Did not greet me, check. Okay. So every time the husband makes a mistake, the old receipts came back. And one day after a small argument, guess what the wife does? She explodes. She's like, you never appreciate anything that I do. I do everything while you just exist in this marriage. Now, the husband feeling like he's being ambushed. Excuse me? I never do what? He's going to feel ambushed by the years of this stored resentment shut down. The problem with scorekeeping is that it builds silent resentment until you explode. The solution for it for you, instead of waiting for that resentment to reach a breaking point, address the issues as they come. Do not be shy. I tell this to many of my couples that when I was doing the coaching sessions. Right now the coaching session is closed, but when I was doing that, I would tell them, find, even if it's 5 minutes every day, every night before you go to bed, ask your spouse, what could we have done differently today? What should we have done differently? What did I do that could be better? What did you do that could be better? This is, what did I do to harm you today? Right? You need to ask this every single night. It makes things easier for you and your spouse. So that way you're not having this built up resentment. You're not feeling like you have to keep the silent scorecard and then you explode the next day. It's not good for you. It's not good for the relationship. It's not good for the marriage. It's not good for your own mental health. Right? Say like, hey, I feel a little underappreciated or unappreciated today. Can you remind me that you see my efforts sometimes? Tell me that you see my efforts. So when you address the small things early, you prevent them from piling up into this emotional explosion of about 5 more minutes. I might be leaving soon. But the silent treatment and the open communication that we have is one of the most, the silent treatment is one of the most destructive things in the struggling marriages. If your marriage is already struggling, why are you silent? I beg, why are you silent? When one spouse withdraws, the other one feels unseen, unheard, unimportant, unneeded, unwanted, just everything. Everything, right? So there's a couple here. The wife hates conflict. So whenever she and her spouse had an agreement or disagreement, she would go completely silent. I used to be that. My first marriage, I just keep quiet. I'm like, no, whatever. If that's how you feel, that's what you feel. Like, very just nonchalant, just, okay, cool. When I say cool, that's cool. That's, I'm not going to go backwards with you. It is what it is. I'm not going to try to explain. It's just that I'm not going to ask you furthering questions. One day, there's another silent argument, right? The wife finally says, Amina, the husband basically said, my wife, when you go silent, I feel like you're punishing me. It makes me not even want to try anymore. Right? When you go silent, you are showing to your other spouse, okay, whatever, I don't care. You don't have to explain nothing to me. It doesn't matter to me. That's going to make the other person quit, not try anymore. So, if you need space, communicate it. We all need space from our partners sometimes. We do. So you can tell them, I'm upset right now and I need time to process. But I don't want us to stay disconnected. So let's talk in a few hours, okay? Set a time aside. This goes back to my tip. Have that conversation with your spouse every day. Like, what did I do? Have a check-in with each other. You always have to check in every night before you go to bed. When you tell them, when you communicate with so-and-so, your spouse, that you're upset right now, you need some time to process what just kind of went down, we can talk about it later, that's perfect. It actually eases that creates that invitation to solution. Now you might say, what if you're the only one trying? And many sisters that I counseled would say, I feel like I'm the only one. And sis, this question is very heavy, right? What if I'm the only one making an effort? When you are in a marriage, you feel like you're the only one trying. You worked on your patience. You tried new communication strategies. You took a course with a life coach. You went to couples therapy, counseling, even read books. By the way, you can get my ebook on Secrets to Thriving Marriages. It's for $15.25. It's on the link in my bio. Click my whatever thingy here, my link, and you'll be able to get that copy. It's going to give you some practical steps on how to communicate, how to build your marriage on a strong foundation. What if you're the only one? And you're like, my husband, I've done everything. He's not changing. Like, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Then you go to someone else, When you plant a seed, this is deep. When you plant seeds, do you expect them to bloom overnight? I will leave it just like that. When you plant a seed, do you expect it to bloom overnight? Comment yes or no. When you plant a seed, do you expect it to bloom overnight? The solutions that I want you guys to think about in your marriages is be consistent, but release the timeline. Growth takes time. Dua is a game changer. Supplication is a game changer. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to soften both of your hearts. Okay, you and your spouse's heart. Focus on what you want. Right? Focus on what you can control. You can control yourself. You can control how you behave. You can control in your acts and stuff like that. You can control you. Your reactions, your mindset, and your approach. Understand? Sometimes when you change, right, the other follows. And even if they don't, you will have grown into a stronger, wiser version of yourself. Okay? Struggling in your marriage doesn't mean failing. Pause before reacting. Address problems early on instead of, storing resentment. Communicate openly instead of withdrawing. Communicate openly. See problems as something to solve together, not a battle to win. Right? And if you feel stuck in your marriage, struggling to communicate with your spouse, you need real strategies. You need real practical examples. Things for you to hone into. And not just feel like, oh, it's a good advice. Yeah, okay. Secrets for a Thriving Marriage is for you. Get a copy of it today. Start transforming your relationship. Faith-based and practical strategies, okay? Sometimes, as I mentioned, divorce might be the only option, but don't rush to it, right? But in many cases, we know that marriage don't fail because of huge problems. They fail because of small things that have never been addressed until it's too late. Before you can fix your marriage, you have to be willing to fix yourself. Thriving wives don't wait for their husbands to change first. They focus on becoming the best versions of themselves. And that shifts the entire dynamic. Okay? You need to be willing to change you. You need to take that leap of faith on yourself. Understand? A lot of the time you're, I'm going to change for him. No, change for you. Be the better version of yourself for you. And that men, again, we're talking about men, that men will follow suit. You get? That men will follow suit, but you have to put the work in. Okay? And let's stop having these unrealistic expectations. Okay? Let's stop that. The communication gaps. I know a lot of the time for the sisters, again, when we upset, we like to put the blame on others. You can say like, you this, you never that. Listen, have a better approach. Change your approach on how you communicate with them. These small shifts, these small changes, this mind shift change is going to better help you for your own mental stability. And you also have to understand that in a marriage, when you're struggling, it's not just about your spouse. It could be about, it might be nothing wrong, nothing that's doing, but because you're having triggers, you need to work on fixing your own triggers. Ask yourself, how do I respond to conflict? Why do I react this way? Ask yourself those questions. Yeah, I wanted to bring that. That's about it for now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.